people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the motherfucking relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. On the heels of her latest defeat, Terri Harper said, sometimes the journey is better than the destination. The biggest thank you to Sandy Ryan, Eddie Hearn, Matchroom Boxing for the opportunity. I had the best camp and preparation for this fight. Nothing more I could have done. Sometimes you just get beat by the better person. A big thank you to all my team and Steffi Bull for having my health as a priority. Thank you to my sponsors and everyone who came out to support last night. Gutted to not get the win. Going to switch off and spend my time with loved ones before getting back in the gym to rebuild. I'm home and safe, and that's all that matters. In the end, I only took Sandy Ryan for a paddle, #deep waters. After 4 rounds, Terri retired on her stool. It didn't make much sense to send her back out there. Steffi Bull, Terri's longtime trainer and manager, said, congratulations, Sandy Ryan. We appreciate the opportunity. Fantastic performance. Since Terri jumped up in weight, she's accepted every challenge presented. Just wasn't big enough to keep Sandy off tonight. Terri is in good spirits. When all is said and done, it's just a job. Time to go back to her natural weight class, 135, thanks to Eddie Hearn, Matchroom Boxing, who's helped me change a young girl's life. She can come again. What's interesting is Steffi is saying she's moving down. So I guess she plans on vacating the WBA title she's held up until this point. The WBA title she's held at 154, she must be about to vacate it. She won that title from then champion Hennerankin. Maybe asking yourself, how is it that Sandy was too big and too strong for Terri Harper at 147, but Hennerankin wasn't too big and too strong for her at 154 at a higher weight? Well, Hannah was slower. Terri Harper, she did carry some power up there to 154, and speed. She definitely carried some speed up there, and it was speed. Speed is definitely a part of how she beat Hennerankin, able to beat her to the punch. But with Sandy, Sandy's got speed of her own, and size. So much so, Terri couldn't keep her off, couldn't keep her out, couldn't work around her. So now she's going to be moving down in weight, down to lightweight, where the landscape is rapidly changing. It's where Katie Taylor used to reign as that division's undisputed champion, but she has since vacated 2 of her 4 alphabet titles. Since having won the Chantel Cameron rematch and become an undisputed champion at 140, she's vacated 2 of her titles at 135. I expect that very soon she's going to vacate the other 2 as well. I don't think she's moving back down. Though the WBO title is going to be on the line in the upcoming Dixon versus Carabajal fight, rumor has it Beatriz Ferreira is going to be taking on Yanina Lescano for the IBF. Sooner or later, Katie's going to vacate the WBC and WBA titles, and if Terri moves down there, she can pick one of them up. She can come again. Losing to Sandy Ryan, the way that she did, is no indictment on Terri Harper's abilities as a boxer, her boxing acumen. Put simply, she just climbed too high. She was never a true junior middleweight. She was never a true welterweight. That she won a title up there is great. Up there at 154, but she was never a bona fide 154-pounder. Durability, punch resistance was always going to be an issue. Side by side with Sandy Ryan, after the fight was over, you could see the difference in build between Terri and Sandy. Sandy's got broader shoulders, whereas most of the weight on Terri is in her legs, in her quads. That does help her power along. It's where the power comes from, but upstairs, even though they're eye level to each other, side by side, you could see the difference between them, that Sandy is bigger. Terry's moving down. As stated, I think Katie Taylor's going to end up vacating both the WBC and WBA titles at lightweight, at which point Terri Harper can move down there and pick one of them up. Become a 3-division champion. If she does, she can then see about unifying that title with the winner of Dixon versus Carabajal, who I anticipate is going to be Rhiannon Dixon. I think she's going to become WBO champion. Similarities between them. Neither Terri or Rhiannon come from a deep amateur background. They're not former Team GB members or anything like that, but they have natural talent, natural ability, and a fight between them for 2 of the 4 major titles would be an even fight, an interesting fight, because if nothing else, Terri is a lot more experienced than Rhiannon Dixon.
She's got that working for her.
Obviously, Terri just fought yesterday, so she's got to take a little bit of time off, but I don't think she should wait too long to get back in there. She should try to later on in the year, say towards the end of the summer or fall.
Plenty of time.
Now, I remember when Jessica Kamara got stopped by Carla Zamora towards the beginning of last year. She got knocked out, she got stopped, and she came right back. She capped off the year off 2 victories.
Terri should try to do the same thing.
We're in March. That still leaves the 2nd quarter of the year, the 3rd, and the 4th. There's plenty of time to rebound off this loss. There's plenty of time to get back out there and get back in the winner's bracket and start planning towards the future. It seems she's just not cut out to campaign at those higher weights, welterweight, junior middle.
That's okay.
She can come again. She's got the talents, the experience, the ability to do it. In what is an ever-changing landscape at lightweight, there are plenty more opportunities there so long as she wants them.
The most important thing is her headspace.
She seems to be in good spirits, and once again, there's no shame in losing to Sandy Ryan. She was just too big.
See what the future holds for Terri Harper.
We then come to the main event of that same card, the 140-pound fight between Dalton Smith, unbeaten up-and-comer Dalton Smith, and seasoned veteran Jose Zepeda. Ahead of this fight, I couldn't pick.
Nope.
I didn't.
I don't usually do that.
What seemed like a real acid test to me for Dalton Smith, a litmus test against somebody who's dangerous enough, they could upset him, they could beat him. Jose Zepeda, when he switched on,
And I think he was.
he's dangerous, a crafty southpaw with knockout power. That's what he is, and for an unbeaten up-and-comer like Dalton Smith, who hasn't really dealt with somebody at this level before,
Anything could happen.
it's one of those fights where you find out more about the fighter and what they really have, where they really are. Dalton Smith, to his credit, he got off to a rocky start with Jose Zepeda. Jose was very busy backing him off.
The first 2 rounds.
I gave the first 2 rounds to Jose Zepeda, last 2 to Dalton Smith, who made an adjustment in the 3rd. You started seeing more of the right hand from Dalton Smith, which is important. Dalton's an orthodox fighter, whereas Jose Zepeda, he's a southpaw.
In the first 2, I was looking at the fighter's feet, who's got lead foot advantage, and it seems that in the first 2, in the early goings of the match, Jose Zepeda had lead foot advantage.
Lining up Dalton Smith for his left hand. In the 3rd, we started seeing more of Dalton Smith's right, which was important. Right hand, the straight right hand, often dubbed the southpaw killer.
He put it to use.
Jose Zepeda still trying to be very busy as Dalton Smith moved around the ring, using it, framing Jose as he came forward for that straight right hand, and you started seeing more of it. 1-2 combinations from Dalton Smith backing off Jose.
Letting his hands go.
Gave the first 2 rounds to Jose Zepeda, the following 2 to Dalton Smith. In the 5th round, Dalton Smith lands a peach of a right hand to the solar plexus. Smack dab in the middle. You don't want to get hit there.
What the fuck's a solar plexus?
The solar plexus, or celiac plexus, is a compilation of nerves and ganglia that is located in your abdomen near the diaphragm and behind your aorta. This nerve center is responsible for the functioning of your abdominal organs like the liver, pancreas, and gallbladder, as well as mediating your body's stress response. We saw what Jose's was.
He completely shut down after that right hand landed.
It's what that does, and that's why some fighters like to go there, straight down the middle with the right hand. That's what Dalton Smith did, completely shutting down Jose Zepeda momentarily.
Couldn't recover.
So I liked what I saw from Dalton Smith from round 1 to round 5, that he might have got off to a rocky start in the first 2, but he adjusted in the 3rd, started letting his hands go, his variety, his power.
Advancing to a professional record of 16 wins with no losses, no draws, 12 knockouts. 12 knockouts now.
Tension now turns to a potential domestic clash with Adam Azim, what's supposed to be the super kid.
What Eddie Hearn had to say about it.
We're obviously going to be at Wardy Clark. I'm going to play him what you're about to say. So you can take the mic, you've got to ask him the questions.
Why have I got to ask him the questions?
Because-
Why can't you ask him the questions that you ask me all the fucking time? What the fuck? So now I've got to do everything, have I? I've got to ask
You
the
can
questions.
become one of the vultures.
I've got to sing the theme tune. I've got to dance to the theme tune. Yeah? But at the end of the day, ask him. All we want to know is, stop fucking everybody around. Are you going to take the fight? You're embarrassing your fighters because the whole social media world now is out in Adam Azim going, mate, what are you doing? Because we're going to world level. We will drop down the levels to fight Adam Azim because the British fight fans love the fight. We love the fight because we can't lose the fight. But stop fucking around. If you're going to take the fight, take the fight. If you're not, get out of the way. Vacate the title. That's it. So my question is, are you going to take the fight now or are you going to vacate? You can ask that. Why doesn't anyone ask them? Why don't you just fucking ask me all the time? Oh, Eddie, you couldn't ask the question as well. What do you want me to do? Come to the press conference?
Well, if you're free, you can.
Do you want me to, I don't know, blow his nose, wipe his bum? I don't know. Do everything? I mean, I know I'm fucking Mr. British Boxing, but I can't do everything. Jeez.
The fans might be asking for it, but the reality of it is, Dalton Smith versus Adam Azim may not happen anytime in the near future because Boxer's not going to send Adam over to Matchroom.
And even if Matchroom were willing to send Dalton over to them, he's still under contract with Matchroom.
So what, Boxer's gonna pay to do the show, do the fight on their side, have Dalton Smith beat their guy, then go back to Matchroom afterwards?
They're not going to want to do that either.
Right now, Dalton Smith is a hot potato to them. They don't want to touch him.
Eddie Hearn is sick of Ben Shalom and Boxer dancing around the issue. What do you want to do? Do you want to make the fight or do you want to vacate the title?
I don't expect them to make the fight, so under pressure to satisfy Dalton as a mandatory, I would sooner expect Adam to vacate the title. Fight somebody else.
Yeah.
The silver lining for Dalton Smith is that Matchroom already hosts a robust stable of 140-pounders, many of which are more experienced fighters than Adam Azim. I mean, he could fight a former champion in Regis Prograis, another crafty southpaw in Liam Pato, an unbeaten one. They've got Hitchens Richards. They've got a world champion in Subriel Matias. That's a fight they could make down the line, and that's just their stable. There are still other guys out there like Elvis Rodriguez and Michelle Rivera.
Other fights they can make.
That if the Adam Aziz fight doesn't happen for them, there are plenty of other fights that can happen, other fights that they can make, so it doesn't really stifle his momentum. He can keep going.
But if the question is whether or not the fight's going to happen, that's a question they have to ask Ben Shalom.
Though I think most of us already know the answer.
It's not.
Benavidez deserves like a lot of credit. Like he's real old school and humble and just like hungry.
A lot of people when they did this, right? A lot of people when they got on Tank's undercard, a smaller dude, a younger dude. Well, actually, Tank's slightly older.
Yeah, but it just him getting on the undercard and he already been main evented pay-per-views in the past. It just shows a lot about them for me. Like he'll do whatever it takes. It's almost like he's hungry and he's like, well, whatever. Like Tank is a lot of eyes are gonna be on you, even though you're on the undercard. So he's building his brand however it takes. He don't really have that ego where like I gotta be a headliner since I already was. Like Benavidez is real hungry. He moved to 75 to get a fight because tired of waiting for Canelo. Like he deserves a lot of praise for it, and I think it's gonna pay off for him in the long run.
Yeah, that's a spin job. It's either a spin job or a misinterpretation of why David's fight might end up on the undercard of Gervonta's.
They talked about how David has headlined his own shows before. They talked about how he's been on pay-per-view at least twice. What they didn't talk about is what did the pay-per-view do? What did it sell? Because it's not enough to just be on pay-per-view, you have to sell something.
Do you think that if David Benavidez's two fights that were on pay-per-view brought in numbers like 300,000 or 400,000, he'd be the co-main event to Gervonta Davis's main event? Do you think that if those pay-per-views would have brought in robust numbers, he'd be on an undercard?
No, he'd be headlining his own show.
With the confidence and peace of mind that if you do a David Benavidez pay-per-view, it's going to bring in robust numbers. But he's been on pay-per-view, and he didn't. As much as I like Benavidez versus Vosdik as a fight, that's not a fight that should be behind a paywall, because Better Be versus Bivol, a better fight than this one, that's not a pay-per-view.
So you can't then turn around and bill Benavidez versus Vosdik as a main event, a pay-per-view, and hope to sell anything. It won't.
There's that to consider, and there is also the limited amount of fight dates that they have to consider. They're down from 19 fight dates, 19 shows that they did last year, to somewhere in between 12 to 14, and they haven't even done one show yet.
I told you this was going to happen last year.
When news broke that the PBC had jumped into bed with Amazon and they were going to try to do 12 to 14 shows, I told you that's not enough shows to accommodate all of their fighters. So what they're likely going to do is trim the fat. Some fighters are going to have to leave. Some fighters are going to have to float away as they have such limited fight dates. And other fighters,
They'll repurpose them. Fighters like David, they're gonna use them to spruce up what cards they are doing.
Fighters like Rolly. Why do you think Rolly's fight with Isaac Cruz is being billed as a co-main event to Tim Zoo's main event? Normally, Rolly headlines his own shows.
He has at least once or twice in the past, so has David.
Why is he now on an undercard? Why is he moving backwards? It's because they're double stuffing these cards with familiar faces, guys that would normally be in their own main events, as an effort to doll up the card, make it more appealing to the customer, to the consumer. Where normally you would see these fighters in separate shows,
They can't do that anymore.
they're bringing them all together to make the card more attractive. Though it's not this act of generosity some are making it out to be. This is not generosity. This is out of necessity.
I mean, if David Benavidez protested, he doesn't want to be an undercard fighter. He doesn't want to go back to fighting on undercards. What the fuck were they gonna do?
Bill his fight as a main event, a pay-per-view, and what the fuck was that gonna sell? It's not enough to just be on pay-per-view. You can slap almost anything on pay-per-view these days, but what is it gonna bring in? There's no emphasis on that, and there are a lot of people in the American market that are willfully being obtuse about this.
Yeah.
Lowering the standard.
That's been going on for a while now. When they started telling themselves that it's this great thing Gervonta Davis is bringing in just under or just north of 200,000 pay-per-view buys, that's not a big number.
It never was, but on that premise, they started calling him the face of boxing.
That's what he normally brings in. Without a Ryan Garcia, he never came close to doing 1 million or even 500,000 pay-per-view buys.
So you think about that and you think about this. He's fighting Frank Martin now. You go in there with Frank Martin, well, you're not going to do with Frank what you did with Ryan. That's established.
You don't have as many fight dates this year as you had last year, but you still have a lot of fighters to accommodate.
David Benavidez is one among them, but you don't want to just keep him on the shelf. He's quasi-buzzing right now. You want to use him, and you can, to spruce up this card. That's all it is. It's not an act of generosity. It's out of necessity.
What praise they're giving him.
What the fuck was the alternative? And that's if he even goes through with this Vosdick fight, because he might not. Samson Lukowicz was on a Boxing Voice just the other day, talking about the potentiality of a Canelo Alvarez fight. And what he said, in so many words, was if David's going to fight Canelo in September, they're going to have to call this Vosdick fight off.
That's what he said to Nesta Gibbs.
What did he say to Barry Gibbs?
What?
Based on the potentiality of a Canelo Alvarez fight later on in the year, what decision will Team Benavidez decide to make? Will they decide to pull out of this thing so they can meet Canelo Alvarez in September behind the scenes? Are there talks already going on?
We don't know.
The Vosdick fight, when you think about it, is a risky endeavor that leads to an even riskier endeavor, facing the winner of Better Beef versus Bivol.
St. Caleb Plant we're talking about, or Anthony Durrell, or any of those guys you've been fighting at 168. This is a different gravy.
And on that premise, you have to wonder if he's even going to go through with the Vosdick fight, or will he cancel it because he thinks he can get Canelo in September?
We'll see.
This idea that we're going to praise David Benavidez for boxing on Gervonta Davis's undercard,
Give me a break.
it's not like he has much of a choice. You can't bill the Vosdick fight as a main event, a pay-per-view by itself, because it won't sell anything.